Alrighty, good morning, AP Computer Science A. This is period A2. This is May 8th. Happy Friday. Hopefully, you're having a fantastic day so far. I have to start off with some very exciting news for you, and that is our annual AP Computer Science A lunch. That is still going to happen this year. We made it happen. It's a thing. It's going to happen. So, what the deal is this form just got posted on Classroom. You probably all see it on my screen right now. Fill that form out for the lunch that I will be making for you. Every year, this will be the third annual AP Computer Science A lunch. I always put together lunch for my students on the day of the AP Computer Science A exam because it helps boost their spirits. We're not actually physically in school this time, so what is actually going to happen is I plan on distributing your lunches to you at the parking lot of the Cumberland Public Library. So I will meet you. I will assemble your lunch if you fill out a form. If you don't want lunch, you don't have to have lunch. I mean, I don't know why you wouldn't take a free lunch, but hey, you don't have to. But I am going to meet you at the parking lot of the Cumberland Public Library from 12:30 to 1. You can choose to come at any time within that interval. I'll be there for an hour, so please feel free to come by at any time. You must wear a mask, any sort of N95 mask, and you must follow proper social distancing guidelines. So, unfortunately, can't go over and shake your hand as much as I would like to shake your hand for completing AP Computer Science A successfully, or at least coming close to that. Can't do that, but I will throw you a lunch that I will make for you based on your response to the form. So please make sure you fill this out. And I will get that lunch for you next Friday. That's the annual AP Computer Science A lunch. I'm happy to do it, and I'm happy that kind of thought of it. We brainstormed away. My girlfriend and I brainstormed away. I got to give her a little shout out. I asked her opinion as well. So she helped brainstorm away with me to make this happen. So it should be A-okay. All right, so that's coming up for you next Friday. That's a good time slot for us because the AP Computer Science A exam is actually on that same day in the afternoon. It's at 4 o'clock p.m. And that would be a good transition now to actually start to talk about the AP exam. But does anybody have any questions about our annual AP lunch?
Is there a way we can put no toppings? Because currently we can't.
You just don't check anything.
It doesn't let us turn it in.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, well, just note in your allergy section, or no toppings. Sorry, that's a little bit of an oversight. It's not a bug, it's a feature, okay? It's a feature. Hey, Mr. Ferreira. How's it going over there?
Hey guys, sorry I was late.
That's all right, no problem.
I got two meetings going on right now. I'm gonna try to listen to you guys.
All right, no worries. Thank you for popping on in. Appreciate it.
Yep.
All right, so yeah, Andrew, sorry about that. I'll have to add an option for no toppings. You just want like ham on bread? Is that what we're looking at?
Well, if I put roast beef.
Roast beef on bread.
Barbecue is what you usually do.
Roast beef and barbecue sauce?
Yeah. Never had a good old roast beef sandwich?
Yeah.
That's not that bad.
I don't usually put all right, well, whatever. We don't have time to argue about the logistics of a roast beef sandwich, but
what about that dill pickle, though?
Dude, I'm ordering flames.
All right, great. So, in any case, if you want that, Andrew, just send me a message and let me know. We'll try to make it happen. All right, we'll try to make it happen. I'll try to accommodate your roast beef and barbecue sauce on bread request. But other than that, fill out that form. We'll have that lunch. It'll be fantastic. Hopefully, it'll just be great to see everybody, I think, in person again. So that'll be really great. Just keep in mind we have to be safe about it. So with that being said, let's talk about the AP exam just a little bit. The AP exam is a week from today. It is Friday the 15th. I sent you a detailed email about what you should be doing prior to the AP exam. Please make sure you read that over if you haven't done so already. There's a couple things that you need to do before the exam, like you need to get access to your admission ticket. You need to make sure you have access to your College Board account. That's important. Don't wait till the day of the exam and then realize you forgot your password and you can't log in. So make sure that you try to access your account. I gave you a pretty step-by-step guide. I linked you to some videos and some information that talks about what the exam administration will look like and what it'll be. So if after looking through all of that stuff, you still have any questions, please feel free to let me know. One very important thing is on the day of the AP exam. Again, you are allowed to have your notes alongside you, as well as any other resources. So I would highly recommend doing so. You could have an IDE open if you wanted to. So you could have Dr. Java up or Eclipse or another one if you prefer a different one. I highly recommend doing that because there's no reason not to do that. I think the string notes would be particularly valuable. I think the notes that we went through on arrays, the notes that we went through on methods would be valuable. Any other little cheat sheets that you want to make for you, the math.random function is probably something that'll show up. I'm trying to think of any others off the top of my head. All the array list and array syntax, you're probably going to want to have all that handy so you don't use dot length instead of dot size and vice versa. So that'll probably be handy for you. You could have any sample programs that we've written available to you. So there's a lot that you can have on you. There's some of that stuff that you can't have on you, though. You can't make sure that you do not try to gain an unfair advantage by communicating with others during the exam. Apparently, the College Board is really cracking down on that. I don't doubt it. I've heard some tales of some crazy ways that they've already caught people trying to gain an unfair advantage, and the exam hasn't even been administered yet. So I would definitely, I can't, just don't cheat. Don't cheat. That's what it comes down to. Don't cheat. But everything else, you can have your notes, you can have your stuff by your side, and I would definitely recommend doing so. All right. So that's that. That's order of business number 2. Make sure on the day of the AP exam, by the way, that you do log in 30 minutes prior to the exam to ensure that you are logged in and everything's all set and you have your materials around you, and you don't want to be spending that valuable time during the exam shuffling for notes and stuff. You want to make sure that you're all ready to go as soon as the clock strikes 4 o'clock p.m. Eastern, because I think that's the time of the exam if I remember correctly. You want to make sure that you are 100% ready to go. Okay? I don't anticipate that you'll need a calculator. If you are doing the regular AP Computer Science A exam, I don't believe that you are allowed a calculator during the exam. So the fact that you're not allowed one probably means that you don't really need one. But, hey, that could be another thing to have by your side, too. So, that being said, what I'd like to do with you guys today is I'd like to go through just one other practice question for the AP Computer Science A exam. It is posted on Classroom. I just posted it before the class started. It took a while to type it up. That's why I wasn't able to post it previously. So if you want to open it up and follow along, you could please feel free to do that. There will also be another progress assessment free response question that I will send out to you today. It will be going out right at the end of class, so you can work on it starting then. It will be due on Monday night at 11:59 p.m. Normally it is Sunday, because that's if we have class Thursday, just shifting everything back one day. So since we have class Friday today, it will be due Monday night. Does that sound good to everybody? So Monday night at 11:59 p.m., that progress assessment will be due. It's just another free response question for you. Kind of a fun fact about that free response question is I initially planned on giving you this one as the free response question because I think it's interesting and it's a good representation of what you could see on the AP exam. However, after looking through this problem, I think it's pretty tough. This is a tough problem. As far as being a good representation of what you'll see on the exam, yes, it does represent the skills that you will encounter, but I think the actual method that you have to write for Part A particularly, Part B is pretty easy, but Part A is definitely a doozy. It is a doozy. So that's why I was like, it'll probably be more beneficial if I go through this with everybody step by step and then give you guys one that has shorter chunks that you have to do independently to try on your own. Okay? Wednesday's class, or sorry, not Wednesday. The next time we see each other after today is Tuesday. And then we see each other again on Thursday, right? And then Friday's our day off next week. Yeah. So we see each other again Tuesday and Thursday. On Tuesday's class, we're going to go through same structure as today, go through one other free response question together. I'll probably go over the one from the progress assessment, and then we'll go over another example. On Thursday's class, I'm going to leave that entirely dedicated to questions that you have for the AP exam. I want to make sure that I address any and all questions, anything that you have. I want to make sure I give you a list of things that you should most certainly have by your side, things that you should most certainly be studying from, and all that good stuff. Hopefully, I mean, your studying should have already started, in my opinion, but if not, it should definitely start today. That's a week of studying. I think that's even not quite as much time as you should take, but hey, if we're already in this boat, then we just got to work with what we got. I think especially today you should start your studying for the exam. Okay? Either practice the free response questions that I provided you on your own, read through the textbook that's provided for you, watch the free lessons provided by the College Board, do the Code HS exercises that I've set you up with, which I noticed some of you have been doing, which is really fantastic. And if you need any additional practice materials, you could either reach out to me, or a lot of times just a quick search can find some practice materials really fast. You can just say, look for AP Computer Science free response question practice. Bam, you'll probably find a lot of results. So just make sure that you are taking it seriously. Please do not try to study for an exam like this the day before or even 2 days before. It's really something that you're going to want to be, really should have been practicing all along, but especially at this point, make sure that you practice. Okay, all that aside, let's get into this actual question. So, sample free response question that I found. I think it's a great question. It's definitely a little tricky though, so let's make sure we go through it together. And if you have any questions, let me know. It says, a school district would like to get some statistics on its students' standardized test scores. Students will be represented as objects of the following score info class. Each score info object contains a score value called score and the number of students that earn that score. So you have the score info, you have two variables, score and number of students. You have a constructor that if they pass in the score, it sets the score equal to that and says the number of students that have obtained that score is 1. You have this method called increment. It adds 1 to the number of students that have received that score. So the idea is there would only be one of these score info objects for a particular number. Like if a student got a 90 on an exam, there would only be one score info object that represents 90. And then if another student got a 90, you would say, well, now number of students in this score info object is 2 because 2 students got a 90. It wouldn't create a separate score info object with the value of 90. If that makes sense. You have a quick little getter of return score, and you have a quick little getter of get the frequency. All right. So we then have this other class called stats, and this class, it says it creates and maintains. Creates and maintains a database of student score information. The scores are stored and sorted in order in the database. So we start with public class stats. We have this array list of score info called score list. So all of the scores that have been obtained on this exam will be stored in this array list of called score list of score info. Jeepers, that's tough to say. The list is sorted in increasing score order, and like I just said, no 2 score info objects contain the same score. So that's a very important idea. This method right here is the doozy. This is the one that's a lot. But I think the way that I was able to handle it is just to break it down to its fundamental components. And like I said, and you'll see it right here, when a problem actually gives you steps to follow, or it really gives you a list of what it's expecting, I think that's actually a great service because you can look at that and you could say, all right, here's what my method needs to do first, then it needs to do this, then it needs to do this, and so on. And so I think that really helps. Rather than if it just presented you with a generic goal, I think that's a lot harder because you have to think about the steps required to reach that goal. Whereas if it gives you the steps that you actually need to take, that's a little easier. So anyway, this method that we'll write first, and then we'll get to part B, it records a score in the database, keeping the database in increasing score order. If no other score info objects represent score, a new score info object representing score is created and added. Otherwise, the frequency in the score info object representing score is incremented. All right? So I think that's a very important line right there. If no other objects exist, then we create a new one and add it to the list. If otherwise, so you can think of that as like if else in your head, the frequency is of the score info object representing the score is incremented. Okay? So the first part says write the stats method, record, that takes a test score and records that score in the database. This method uses the following algorithm, very key. If the score already exists in the database, the frequency of that score is updated. So let's before we even read the rest of it, let's see if we can tackle that little piece. If the score already exists, the frequency of that score is updated. How can I check that? Well, what I can do is I can use a loop, and I can go through that array list, and I can see, hey, do any of these scores match the score that's being provided? So I can say for int I, I already put 4. Int I is 0, I is less than, it's called score list dot size, and again, it's dot size because it's an array list, I++. I would say here, let's see, we're looking to see if any of the scores are the same. So how do we get the scores from one of these score info objects? We use this method called getScore. So I would say if the score that was provided by the user equals score list dot size. Where are we here? Score list. Oh, sorry, not score list dot size. Score list dot get at index I dot get score. So if I actually find this score in my list, I'm going through the whole list of scores, and if I actually find it, then I want to do score list dot get at index I, and I want to increment, or I want to add 1 to the number of students that actually got that score. How do we do that in our score info object? Oh, right here. It's increment. It's actually called increment. Great. So I can say dot increment. Just like that. Okay. That takes care of now our, if the score already exists, we can increment the score. It also says here, notice, it says, it returns true if a new score info object representing score was added and false otherwise. So this does not actually add a new score info object to the list, notice. So we would return false. Okay? Does that first part of that method make sense?
Yes.
Yes. A-okay. All right, fantastic. Second part of that method says, if the score does not exist in the database. Notice that, by the way, if we made it through this whole loop to here, meaning we never triggered this return statement, then we're already in the condition in which that would not be the case. If the score does not exist in the database, a new score info object is created. So let's stick with that first. Let's create a new score info object. Ready? Let's call it score info. SC equals new score info. And we need to, in order to create this score object, we need to make it, let's see, we just have to provide it with the score, right? So we just have to say score. Oops, like that. So we created the new object. Now we need to insert it into the appropriate position so that the database is maintained in increasing order. So think of how you are going to do that. And this is something that took me a little while to figure out. If you have a list of scores that are in order from least to greatest, right? If you can start at the beginning of the list, right? What you can do is you can compare your current score to the next element in the list. And you could say, well, is my current score bigger than the current element in the next element in the list? And if that's the case, then we need to advance further, right? We need to advance further, because otherwise I would just have to drop my, I'd be in the right spot, right? I'd have to just drop my score right there. Does that make sense? So as soon as that's not the case, though, as soon as we find that, hey, the score that I'm comparing, if I look at the index that comes right after it, if that's not bigger, well, then I know that I finally found the position where I need to insert the score. Okay? So let me try to repeat that again. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start at the beginning of the list. I'm going to compare my score with what comes after that in the list. And I'm going to say, is my score larger? If so, then I need to advance in the list and then compare it to the next thing and say, is my score still larger? And if so, we need to keep advancing. And we need to keep advancing until that's not true anymore. If we find a score that, hey, that's bigger than the score that I was provided, then we know that that's the position that we need to insert our current score. Now, there's a little hitch with that, but I'll talk about that little hitch in just a moment. Let me try to code that for you, that method that I just described. So I need to first use a loop to do that. We can do for, same thing with for int I is 0. Now, we want to start at index 0 because I want to compare what I'm starting with index 0, correct? So we could say I is less than score list dot size minus 1. And the reason why I want to end it at size minus 1 as opposed to just size is because I don't want to be at the position of score list.size minus 1 and then try to compare after that, because that would result in going out of bounds. So that's why we want to stop at that point and do I++. I can say if, ready for this? If sc.getScore. So that's now the score of my new object that I created. You could just say if score as well, because sc.getScore, if this is called sc, would be the same thing. But we could just say if sc.getScore is greater, is greater. Is this how we want to do it? Is greater, is less than. Oh, is less than, sorry. Is less than what comes after it. So I want to say if it's less than what comes after it. I think that's what I need to do, right? Yeah, if it's less than what comes after it. We can do score list.size, score list.get at index I plus 1. Okay? I think that's all it would take. If our current score is less than what comes after it, then that's good. That means I want to put my score in that position. I want to say, oh, hold on. I want to say .get to I plus 1 .get score. Like that. That's good. I want to then insert it at that position. I want to say score list .add. We can add it at index I because that's now where we want to insert that thing. And I could say let's add our object sc. Does that look good to everybody? I think that looks good to me. I just want to double check. I'm not saying that to be rhetorical. I'm saying, does that look solid to everybody? Hopefully?
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm going through the whole list. I'm saying, is my score less than what comes after it? And if so, then that's good. If it's not less, then I need to keep advancing through the list. And I think that should make sense, right? The only issue I think that this method provides is the fact that it doesn't check the last index of the list. I think that's where it's stuck. Like, think of if the score that was just provided was bigger than every other score in the list. I don't think that this little loop here would actually account for that. Unless I'm incorrect, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. But I don't think this little loop would actually account for what if the score I received is bigger than every other score in the list. Is that correct? I don't think that this accounts for that. So the way that I would do that is I would say, well, if this. So by the way, if you didn't do, if you probably did this, I think this question when I looked at the scoring guide is worth 7 points. I think you'd probably get 6 points out of those 7. If I just very quickly want to make sure though, I say if sc.getScore is larger than the very last score on the list. Score list.get score list.size -1, because that's how we can access the last score on the list. So if it's bigger than all of that, we could say score list.add sc. And notice we wouldn't have to add an index because it would just add it to the end of the list, right? If it's bigger than everything else in the list, let's just add it to the end. Okay? So that's good. Now we could say else, and we could do all this stuff. Like that. And then at the very end of all of that, we can return true because we want to return true if a new score info object was added. So I want to return true. Okay, oops, return. Like that. Okay, and that is that method. Holy cow. Like I said, I told you that one was a doozy. That one was tough. I think that would have been really hard to ask you to write independently. And I don't think any method that you'll be required to write on the actual AP exam will be that complex, like have that many parts to it. Hold on. So, let's make sure. There we go. Kind of condenses all together here. Just like that. Does that look good? Does anybody have any critiques of that? I think that should be fine. I'm thinking of, does it make sure that it's smaller than the first position? I think so. If we're smaller than index 0, like think of if I is 0, if you're smaller than index 1, then it adds at index 0. I I think that would make sense. Is everybody cool with that? Does anybody have a question on that? I mean, if you really want to make sure, you can add an additional condition if you want, and you could say if sc.getScore is less than scorelist.get index 0. Like if it's smaller than everything else in the list, like you could do this if you want to. Like that. Just to super double check that you're catching the beginning of the list and the end of the list. And then otherwise just like kind of search through the list to find where you need to add it. But other than that, that should make sense. Any questions about that? I think the very important thing about this question is to just take it piece by piece though. It took me a while to think about this and say like, how can I actually figure out where we're positioned in the list and say like, oh, let's compare it to what comes next and see, are we less than that? If so, then that's good. And if not, then that's bad. We need to keep advancing through the list until that's true. Right? I think this condition is probably a good thing to have anyway. I'm trying to think like if this would actually work. And I don't think it would account for this specific instance in which it's smaller than everything else. Or bigger than everything else. But anyway, if you have any critiques on my code, feel free to let me know. But I think that should be about what we're looking for. Part B is actually really easy of this, which is funny because Part A is this like crazy method that does all these fantastic things. And Part B is like very simple. It says write a stats method, record scores. It takes an array of test scores and records them in the database. The database contains at most one score info object per unique score value. Each score, we already knew that. Each score info object contains a score and associated frequency. We know that. The database is maintained in increasing order based on the score. In writing record scores, assume that the record works as specified, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so all we have to do really is just say, hey, if we're given a bunch of scores, let's make sure we add them all to the list to use this record method. So it's literally just a loop where we can just say, I'll show you, it takes 2 seconds. For int I is 0, I is less than student scores dot length, I plus plus, and we just want to make sure we pass in all the values that are provided to us, like that. And that's all there is to that method. And it's a void method, it doesn't return anything. So that's that. Okay? Does that make sense? The way that the scoring breakdown was for this question is this one was worth 7 points and this one was worth 2 points, which makes sense. This one is obviously way harder than this one. I don't know, by the way, if this was the most efficient way to do this. It's the way that I thought of, and I want to always emphasize the fact that the solutions that I'm presenting to you are not the only solutions that exist in the whole wide world. You could have done this a completely different way as well. There may be a mistake in this particular code. I can't, I'm looking at it right now and it seems to make sense. I think this would certainly get you, if not 7 points, then 6 points out of the 7. But I don't see any cracks in the armor, but, I guess that's always a possibility. Oh, do you got something? I heard someone just unmute. Any questions or comments or anything? No questions? No comments? Feeling good? Feeling happy? All right. Sounds like everybody. I take your silence as, Mr. Giorgio, everything is A-okay, and you're doing fantastic. All right. Well, that's all the time we have today, unfortunately. Like I said, I am going to send you out another assessment today, free response question assessment. It's the same as the other two, so please make sure you get it done by Monday night and submit it to me. I'll do it via Google Classroom again. That seemed to work out well, so it will be uploaded on Google Classroom very soon. And make sure you get it done. Make sure you post it on Google Classroom. If you prefer to do it by hand and take pictures and send them to me, that's totally fine as well. As long as I get it somehow before Monday at midnight. Okey-doke. Thank you so much for your attention and focus today. If you have any other questions, please feel free to let me know. But I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day.
Have a good day, Mr. Giorgio.
See you later.
Mr. Giorgio.
See you later.
I actually do have a quick question.
Right guy, what's up?
Because I know I shared my note sheet on the server. Should, like, people make a copy of it before, like, they use it on the test, or...
Yeah, that's probably a good idea. I'll make sure to mention that to everybody. Are you okay with if I post that on Google Classroom?
Oh, yeah, I'm completely fine with that. I mean, I posted it on the server.
Yeah. All right, I'll post it on Classroom and let everybody know to make a copy of it.
All right, thanks.
Thanks, Ryan, for putting that together. I appreciate it. Any
Yeah.
other questions?
Not necessarily.
Alrighty, my friend. I hope you have a great day.
Have a good weekend.
Oh, and a good weekend. That's right. Good weekend.
When's the next class? Is
Next
it
class
Tuesday?
is Tuesday afternoon.
Yep. See ya.
See you later. Or Tuesday morning, rather. Tuesday morning.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Mr.
Sorry, I
Fur.
couldn't be
Appreciate
more
it.
present. Sorry.